start? It's already 10 and everybody is in.
So this time I would like to introduce the presenter, right? Yeah, so good morning, everyone. So first of all, I would like to thank Avanca 2021 very much for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this auspicious conference. 2 years back, I was there in Algara because I was there on mobility program. So University of Porto. So professor was here. So very nice to be connected again. So today's our first presentation is about advocating old cinema's multipolarization, and the presenter is Chong Kingman, and he's from Freie University of Berlin, Germany. So I guess this presentation time is 30 minutes or 20 minutes, ma'am.
15 minutes.
15 minutes. So I would like to request the presenter, Mr. Kinman. So please, the floor is yours. Best wishes. Here.
Should I start right now?
Yes, yes, right.
Okay. Good morning for those in Europe. Good morning, Portugal. Bom dia. Today, I would like to do a very short introduction about my communication, my paper, which is the title is, I don't remember the title even. Advocating world cinema's multipolarization. Actually, the title is a smirk, and actually, in this very short paper, I talked more about some of my thoughts about globalization, fabrication of the West and the rest of the world, and using just cinema as a smoke. And I will share the paper on Google Doc, and I will share it here. So if you're interested, you can look at it. Actually, if I only have 15 minutes, actually it's still a little bit too much. I don't have much to say. I would like to first talk a little bit about this topics that I'm interested in, and then maybe I would be happy to listen to you and then try to use the time that I still have afterwards to reply to each paper. I think it is more interesting. Maybe I'm a little bit selfish. It would be more interesting for me also to interact with you rather than I talk about my own presentation. But the paper is there. If you are interested, you can have a look. It's a paper written not much in an academic way, but it's a little bit written in an ironic way. Okay, so I first introduce a little bit myself. I think it is very important to how can I say it, to situate my personal case in this academic setting. I'm doing officially a PhD in visual anthropology at the University, the Freie Universität Berlin in Berlin. I did the master in the same program. I am from Macau, which was a Portuguese colony until 1999, although they didn't say that it's a colony. They said it was a Chinese territory under Portuguese administration after the Portuguese Revolution in the 1974. So somehow I am a ex-colonized, if we want, that in this program, in this program at the Freie Universität, I think if I understood it well, we were educated to have the obsession to be revolted the Western colonization or the Western knowledge. We were taught to be critical and to criticize Western knowledge in general in order to serve the Western system, to improve the Western system, using us as a how can I say, using us as a kind of a critical force that at the end actually improves the Western knowledge system. And in this sense, so I have been saying that it is somehow a interesting and happy trap of for non-Western academics or non-Western scholars. The thing is, I have observed, I have been observing this obsession around the world about the so-called Western and the non-Western. And I found it somehow super problematic, because since we talk about non-Western, it only strengthened the Western. If we talk about Eurocentrism, we criticize Eurocentrism, and then the more that we criticize, the more that Eurocentrism seems to be strengthened. And somehow I call it a intellectual trap. And also, I also observe some religiosity of our knowledge, how we produce the knowledge. And I think somehow academy is also a kind of a church that we as non-Western or the Western themselves or ourselves, we are taught to be religious, unconsciously religious towards the knowledge in general. And after this somehow hierarchical search of the origin of the production of knowledge, for example, now I am talking in a very fragmented way, maybe in my broken English, everything, maybe it is also difficult to understand what I'm saying. I think it is somehow I'm happy to talk in that way, because I think we are actually using too much categorization in general in the academic, not only in the academic setting, because as I'm living in Berlin for 5 years, what I observe is a huge obsession of categorization in general, like 1 is 1, 2 is 2, for example. But like yesterday, I also had a very brief introduction about the idea of decentralization, which is somehow for me a very utopian idea, just like freedom as a Western invented concept. But how can we achieve all this? And this is one of my biggest questions. Actually, I would like to then to listen to you. I don't have much to say. I would like to listen to you, and then I would like to use the time that I still have to ask some questions to each of you. So my topic is very simple: as what is the Western meaning of globalization, of everything, culture, in cultural terms, or in political terms, or in economic terms. So cinema is just a smoke. Cinema seems to be a universal thing, but what is universal? I think the problematics of the present process of globalization is that it gives us the illusion that the so-called universalities of thing is somehow universal, but what is the universe? Which universe we are talking about? Is this universe universal at all, or this universal is just something invented or inspired by Western philosophy? For example, universe itself is a Western concept. So I am happy to talk only until here, and I think my head is a little bit too chaotic, and I let it also a little bit chaotic. But I would like to listen to you, and then I would use the time, if I still have some time. I think I still have. I would like to interact to and other communications today, because I'm looking at the program. It seems to be very interesting. Yeah, we still have 3 programs, and it seems all of us are from the West. It's a little bit stupid to say from West or non-West, but it is somehow the so-called, I would say, an academic obsession to categorize West and non-West, and maybe only the moderator. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Rabindra. Rabindra. Yeah. So we are somehow, we are nearer, although I am a Berlin, but my head and my way of being is still very Asian. I would say somehow that I'm a cultural monster, because if we learn a lot of the so-called Western knowledge, not only through university but also through our daily life, then this kind of makes sure that, for example, at least makes me feel very confused, and I stop my confusing and brief presentation here, and I would love to listen to you instead of just me talking. Yeah, if it is okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kinman Chong. Right? Kinman Chong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm from Nepal, so near our country, neighboring country, China is India, so I'm Asian. So I have some queries about your work. You have mentioned that Westernization in cinema, Westernization. Due to globalization, there is decategorization of cinema. What actually you wanted to say with this advocating for the decategorization of cinema means in your paper?
I would like to ask you to repeat the question. I didn't really get it. Sorry.
Okay, so in your paper you have mentioned that, okay, so you are advocating for the decategorization of cinema. Okay, so you would like to see the same pattern throughout the universe about cinema, or you like to see a different type of cluster, like East Asia, one type, Western Asia, Southeast Asia, Europe, America, so Australia. What actually, which is the best way to represent your culture through cinema without categorizing?
My culture, you said,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, because cinema is like showing one social characteristics. Yes, social characteristics. And do you think we have to present these social things in same manner globally or different ways? What is your opinion?
Yeah, I'm not sure what I get you. But maybe I try to speak a little bit about the idea. I think I am like, I'm not sure whether we say that in English. I feel very shared. And like in French, je me sens très partagé. I feel very shared. On one way, I think it's very important to observe all these cultural differences.
Yes.
A part of me, I observe it as something very important. Another part of me is something that I see all the cultural differences as a smoke, or all this kind of categorization in general. Like cultural differences is just one of many kinds of categorizations of things and boundaries, whatever. I'm not very precise at these terms. So another part of me, I observe human essence as something much more important. And the thing is, if we observe what is happening with the biggest film festival in the world, like just the biggest are Berlinale in Berlin, how to say Venedig in English, Venice, right? Venice Film Festival, and also of course Cannes, Festival de Cannes, if we want Sundance also, and they are all in the West. And of course, if we talk about other big festivals like Busan, Tokyo, but I still observe a this how can I put it in a way, like this obsession to have a certain how can I say standard, which is very much inspired and still bounded to the very Western origin of cinema. Like if you go a little bit, I mean, maybe in terms of stories, in terms of the poetics, we can still find a lot of logics, like non-Western logics that are related to the Western, non-Western setting. For example, just look at the, I don't remember his name, the one of the biggest contemporary Iranian filmmaker. Like, I don't remember his name, Abba Kia something.
Kiarostami.
Yeah, and for example, what I observe is a very how can an intense connection in his cinema to the the classical Persian poetry, and this is only my observation. But when I read Derrida also had I had this observation because I got just accidentally to a book by Derrida. Derrida also observed his cinema with Iranian art, for example. But still, these are the contents, and this somehow the structure, the way of producing knowledge or information through the so-called setting of cinema is very much like everything else in the world. Like, for example, we are talking here in, like, I think I'm repeating the Portuguese lady. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, sorry. You were here, for example, yesterday. I would like to repeat the same thing. In this academic setting, this system of university of producing knowledge, writing paper in an individual authorship, and communicating in such a setting of conference, actually we are doing something, what I observe, very Western. But I think it's also very problematic. I'm criticizing exactly what I'm doing now by saying that that is very Western, what is non-Western. Actually, I am somehow doing complicit to strengthen the so-called westernization of things in general. I think I'm going too far, but maybe you need to control me a little bit, that I don't go too far away from everything. But what I want to say is, what I was trying to advocate is there any way to think differently other than only producing in such a system? You know, like just I talked about this Iranian director is it's just an example how he used the very Western origin setting of cinema to invent or invent his ideas or even the passion history or passion poetry. And what I want, or at least what I wish in my head, is how even we get other kinds of settings of ways of thinkings. Like, for example, we are doing a conference. How could we invent another setting to discuss all this we are discussing? But maybe this wish is already very ironically Western invented, because I am educated somehow. My master program was very much Western, although the wish I observed the wish of the program was exactly to produce non-Western knowledge, but exactly this will to produce non-Western knowledge strengthen the Westernness of the system itself. So yeah, I hope I am understandable. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much for your detailed explanation.
Yeah.
So from my side, it's okay. So anyone of us would like to ask any question, please go. Otherwise, I need to call another presenter. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Because you tried your best to explain your things. You are so deep in your study and sharing your information. That is the good characteristics of any scholar. So language is just the sharing our things to other, but we cannot share everything through language. So you don't worry about any skills in language, because what we think we cannot express through language. That is the thing we express through cinemas and other thing, other way, paintings, cinemas. So good luck to your PhD study. Thank you very much. So so may I call another presenter, or what about, ma'am? Hello, ma'am.
Yes, yeah, yes, of course. Let's go to the second one. Pilar, are you with us?
Yes. Could I have good morning or good afternoon? Could I please have can I share my PowerPoint presentation, please?
Yes, you can, of course.
Okay.
Actually, I'm very pleased to listen to your presentation, ma'am.
Good. Well, no pressure, of course. Okay.
So,
can you see it?
yes, it's displaying. Yes, right.
Okay. So I'll start. Okay, my presentation perhaps is just the opposite of what Kim and Jung was saying, because what I am advocating for is for the idea that cinema should be accessible to all. So it doesn't matter if you are a Westerner or you are not a Westerner. If you are any color, anything, you should have equal access to content, to cinema. And of course, that has many layers, because it's not only the language, it is the culture, it is the metaphors, the visual metaphors, whatever you are putting there. So that is the idea. And my presentation is called Leading Accessible Cinema Across Europe. And the concept here is accessibility, media accessibility. And media accessibility, we want to talk about that because the right of people to access audiovisual content, it was declared a human right in 2006. So it is a human right like education or like any other human rights, which it is more or less, I don't know, kept in the countries that belong to the United Nations, to the UN. The way it works is that the UN prepares a human rights, and then in this case it was the CRPD, and then all the countries who are members of the UN, they approve it, and then they ratify it, and they have a number of years to act and to make sure that their country is ready to take on these new human rights and to protect the human rights. So this was done in 2012. And it is quite interesting because in Europe, it wasn't done at a country level. It was done as Europe as a whole, like United States were United Europe. This is the first time that Europe has signed a human rights as a European entity, a full united entity. And it hasn't done anyone since. So it is quite a strange way of acting. But it also meant that legally, it also had to go through European legislation, and this European legislation has had to go down into each European country, because in a way it's similar to United States. Each state has its own rule, has its own independence, and from legal situations as well. So Europe started in 2012, and with the legal context to protect these human rights, and it issued 3 pieces of legislation, which is the web accessibility. That means that anyone should access the web and interact with the web as anything else. This is very important because if we then are going to distribute any cinema through the website, through IP, the interaction with this web should be accessible first of all. So it is very good that Netflix shares or distributes with subtitles, for example. But then the access to Netflix should be also accessible. That's what the web accessibility says. The next one is the audiovisual media accessibility. And what that legislation tells you is that what are the products that they need to be accessible. And that goes from the television to when the machines that you get money from the bank in the streets, or when you buy a ticket for the metro in any screen, in any station. So all the screens, the ebooks, for example, or any type of content that you consume through screens. And that was the Audiovisual Media Directive. And the last one is the European Accessibility Act. And this tells you how to make these instances that were identified as accessible, that could be accessible, how to make them accessible. And those 3 pieces of legislation, they've been passed. So they were done last year by 2020, and they now have 5 years to be implemented. So in June 2025, all cinema will have to be accessible, and all access to cinema will have to be accessible. And if you are not accessible, you would be able to, well, you unfortunately, you would go under fines by your country first, and then by the European Commission later. So this is a serious issue. It's not that you want to put subtitles or you don't want to put subtitles on your movies. You must provide subtitles in your movies, and that is for 2025. Okay. And of course, as any piece of legislation, you need to put a standardization there. So there was the standard 301549, and this standardization tells you how to do it to achieve quality. Okay, so that is the background for accessibility in Europe, which is not that very different actually from Nepal, and it's not that very different from China, because all those countries, they have signed also this human rights agreement. So that is something quite interesting as well. So what have we done in Europe to try to put this legislation? Well, we've done many research projects across Europe. And the other thing that we have done in Europe is the Europeans, they've put some money to create a network. And this network, it is for 4 years, so it takes you all the way to 2025. And the idea is that we help each other to achieve these goals that they've been stated in this European law. And the idea of this is because Europe is quite a strange place in the sense that the way we consume audiovisual media, it depends on the country where you live. Some countries use subtitles, and these are almost all the countries in Europe. But there are 4 countries that they are different, and the 4 countries that are different are Spain, Italy, Germany, and France. These 4 countries don't usually go for subtitles, they go for dubbing. And then it is very different. The process is very different, everything. It is very different how you perceive it. It's very different how you dub it. It's very different, everything there. And then there is another set of countries, for example, Poland or all the countries in the east side of Europe, where they use neither subtitles nor dubbing. They use something called voiceover, which is, I don't know if you've heard it, it's a bit strange. You have the main voice, the original voice in the background, and then you have one voice that interprets, that translates everything in all the characters are all done by one person on top. So again, that's something very different. So Europe is quite strange because we have these 3 different ways of translating foreign movies. It's also very different as well because technology is not the same for all the country, for all the languages. So it is not the same, the technology for English or the technology for German, which are big languages, and the technology for very small languages like Maltese or a language where we come from, which is Catalonia. Catalan is a very small language, even though it is bigger, for example, than Danish, that is another European country. And the technologies for these small languages cannot be compared to the technologies to large languages like Spanish, for example. So this lack of opportunities for languages to allow for the content to be accessible, it's also an important issue. So these and many other issues are there really stopping for the whole of Europe to become accessible in an even fashion. And that's why we've created this network. What do we do in this network? Well, for us, accessibility, media accessibility, amongst other things, has to do with subtitling, or some people call it captioning, which is when you add a caption at the bottom. Then you have something that I don't know if you're aware or in your country or not, and it's called audio description. And funnily enough, this year was the first year that all the movies at the Oscars were audio described. And an audio description, for example, would be something like, yes, Kim Man-chen is sitting in his study with a background full of books. He's wearing a black t-shirt and he's putting his fingers in his mouth. So if I did that audio description, people who can have access, visual access to the content, would have an alternative, not an equal experience of a visual, but it would be an alternative clues or an alternative to whatever is happening there. And that is called audio description, and that is what it is, another accessibility service, and it is always distributed by a voice. So subtitling is a text, audio description is a voice. We have sign language, and you know that each language has an associated sign language, okay? So, and there is not one sign language for the whole universe, so that should be very clear, okay? And then we have audio subtitling, which is a bit strange to explain, but I think very easily you understand. if we were watching a movie with Japanese, even better, if we were watching a Catalan movie with Catalan subtitles, yes, then nobody would understand. You wouldn't understand that unless you were able to read Catalan, okay? But if you were watching a movie in Catalan with English subtitles, yes, and you cannot read the subtitles, you would need that to be read aloud, okay? So audio subtitling, it is, believe it or not, a very, very common and also very cheap way to make media access, content access, because it is only a text to speech. They have this facility. And another way to do accessibility to content is to make it easy to read. And by easy to read, I mean that, for example, the contrast, it is both legibility and readability. So the contrast of the subtitles with the background, it is good. It would be very bad, for example, here, if we put black over or yellow, it would be really coming out. It is to do with using easier words rather than difficult words to read. So if you use easier words, you can read much faster. And then the split attention that you have with the subtitle and reading the visual narrative is then balanced up, okay? So that would be what accessibility services we have, what we mean. This network that we've started to do, it has 27 countries. It also has India, for example, and it also has South Africa, for example, and I also have people from the US. So you're very, very welcome from Nepal to join us. You're very welcome from, well, you're in Berlin, but I don't know where is your background. So wherever you came from, if you're beyond Berlin, you're very welcome to join us from other countries outside Europe. You can be part of it as well. We started this in October in 2020, and it is a shame, but there is nothing we can do. It's COVID, and it's COVID for everyone. So it was done online, and we're still working online. The structure is a very simple structure. There is a chair, that is myself, then a vice chair from Switzerland, that's Robin Ribak. And then we have Anna Matamala and Susie from my university, also from our team, who are also helping with the communication and with the administration. This network is organized in 4 groups. And you can, if you want, if you were interested, you can belong to the whole network, but then you can then go and do special actions in the work group 1, and this to do with industry, basically, and the technical side of it. Then the second one is to do with education, with teaching, with research. The third one is standardization and quality, which is very future. Also, how are we going to, once this is finished, how are we going to carry on? What do we have? We have money, which is quite nice. And we have money for people to establish bilateral research. So you could ask from Nepal, for example, to have money to go to anywhere that you want in Europe and do an action for 3 days or for 5 days. And then you would go, you would have to find a person there. You would find a person there, a topic there for your research, and the network would pay for you to go there. And again, we have grants. You can participate in conferences. You can, and all that is paid by the cost action. So there is money for anyone to apply and get some funding for an activity related with the issue of media accessibility across. Media accessibility doesn't even have to be across Europe. Media accessibility in itself. This is all I have to say. I don't know if you have any questions, and I really enjoy Kim and Chun's idea, because actually in accessibility in Europe, we've done the other way around. We used to think that accessibility was for the deaf or for the blind or for the whatever. So we had a very clinical classification of accessibility. So we were doing subtitles for the deaf. We were doing audio description for the blind. But then we realized that this is not a very diverse approach. It was more of an integration approach. We are the perfect ones and we want people to integrate to our normality, okay? And that is really against diversity. So our approach is no longer clinical. So you're deaf, you're blind. So we classify you by your deficiency, but our idea is by capability. So what can you do? Can you read or you can't read? Okay, and that is a more diverse approach. And this is why I think it's quite interesting listening to you before talking about Western or non-Western, because perhaps this is quite limiting in the scope of what you are trying to say with whatever content that you're having. And I think perhaps you can go a bit further up and communicate through universals, like for example, love or hate or war or yeah. So perhaps if you go through the universals, death, perhaps you would find that death, I don't know if it is the same, the death for Westerners and non-Westerners. I don't know if love is the same for Westerners and non-Westerners. I think it's challenging. I find it very boring, the concept of Western also, because, for example, my children are intermarriage. So there is no Western and non-Western. They just got together. So it's more and more difficult these days to find this clear bipolar classification of anything. In fact, I find it that is very fluid. But that's all. Thank you very much. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Pilar Borrero. I'm very grateful to listen to you about this through which everyone has right to access cinema thing for human beings. So as you mentioned in your presentation, love is for everyone. When people laugh, they feel happiness. When people cry, they feel like sadness. So this is like universal language that you explain very thoroughly, which touches all of our listeners' heart. So I'm really privileged to your presentation and your project and proposal. Even you have offered some kind of short scholarship for participating global researchers in this in your project. And thank you very much. Who would like to connect, so I will let you know through this our conference coordinators. So Professor, thank you so much for your nice presentation and insightful thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have listened very nice presentation. Now I have another presenter, and she is Miss Marta Brescia Zapata. I'm sorry if I pronounce incorrectly. Please forgive me for this thing. So as you know, you have 50 minutes of presentation, and we will have short interaction. And I also encourage other participants and other distinguished person to suggest and to have some suggestion or some queries, so that the presenter will be motivated for next time. So, so because presentation is giving presentation in a conference is a kind of like receiving the perception of listener or audience to motivate and to encourage and to improve the presenter's work. So I request all of you to have short suggestive comments if possible. So please, Ms. Marta, now your turn for presentation.
Okay, thank you, Vista. And I will start by sharing my screen so you can see the presentation I've prepared. Can you see my screen?
Yes, right.
Okay. Okay, and good morning, everybody. My name is Marta Brescia, and I am a predoctoral researcher at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. And I will be talking today also about media accessibility. Maybe my presentation is a step beyond Pilar's presentation, but it's more or less in the same line. So, and that's why I will start by presenting myself in an accessible way. I am a 25-year-old white Mediterranean woman. I've got short black hair and a straight fringe. And today I'm wearing a fluorescent shirt and I'm sitting in the front of a plain white wall. My presentation is entitled Culture Meets Immersive Environments, a New Media Landscape Across Europe. I will start my presentation with a brief introduction explaining what we talk when we talk about XR, as I assume that not everybody is familiarized with immersive environments. Then I will give examples of sectors which are using virtual reality nowadays and how are they implementing diverse immersive technologies. After that, I will introduce you to European projects that use immersive environments as a tool to bring culture closer to the population. And I will finish by sharing some conclusions and thoughts about the relation between XR and culture. Well, I would like to start by answering a very simple question. What is XR? Well, XR stands for extended reality, and it is a term referring to all the technologies combining real and virtual environment and human-machine interactions generated by computer technology. XR includes the entire spectrum from full real to full virtual in the concept of the virtual reality continuum that you can see here in the graphic. Actually, XR enables user experiences that combine virtual content and the reality of users. And it is an umbrella term that includes augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual reality. The main goal of any immersive content is to make people believe that they are physically there. This feeling is what we call presence, and it refers to tricking at least 3 of the 5 senses of the brain into believing that you have been taking or moving to a different place. We can say that the more immersed a user is in the environment, the higher the level of presence they feel. But it's true that still in 2021, immersive videos are limited by in nature, as they can make sometimes people motion or simulator sick. Sometimes they can be unrealistic, and all this can lead into a suboptimal experience that turns the user off the immersed experience. Even considering this limitation that I have mentioned, virtual reality is actually one of the technologies with the highest projected potential for growth in the next years. So the next question will be, which sectors is virtual reality actually being used in today? And I think we can actually find examples almost in all fields you can imagine, but I will give you some more precise examples. And For example, regarding education, in classroom, the use of VR allows students to better retain knowledge and also helps students with learning difficulties. Regarding the media, there is something that we call immersive journalism, and it consists on taking the user to the place where the events have occurred with a live streaming 360-degree video. Entertainment is, I think, a very logical sector where we can use VR, as the user can enter a scene in a video game, for example, or practice extreme sports without moving from the sofa. Then regarding the culture and arts, there are some museums and galleries that nowadays offer visits or virtual visits or immersive experiences to help understand the history and the culture associated with each piece of work. And also medicine, VR has been already tested in some treatments. For example, the Spanish National Research Council has succeeded in reduces the effects of Parkinson's in several patients by applying treatment that use VR. And I think medicine is one of the field which is using VR more conscious nowadays. And then also industry, they have developed something that is called digital twins. And digital twins are exact digital copies of physical objects that factory workers can practice on and test in a virtual world. So now, moving on to the projects, I would like to start presenting Traction. Traction is an European Age 2020 project that brings opera to marginalized groups to let them tell their own stories and also defining new forms of artistic creation. In this context of co-creation, 3 experimental trials will be held. The first in the Raval neighborhood in the city of Barcelona, the second one in a youth prison in Leiria, Portugal, and the third one will involve the rural communities from Ireland. We can say that the last and most ambitious goal of this project is to use opera and new technologies to provoke a social change. As I have just said, one of the main objectives of this project is related to new technologies and to novel audiovisual art representation formats. And from these 3 trials that I have presented, the one which will be performed by the Irish National Opera, the INO, has virtual environment at its heart. As they aim at creating a full virtual reality community opera. That means that there will be no physical live performance. I mean, the opera will only exist in a digital format, and the people will experience it by using a VR headset. The representation, of course, aims to be also fully accessible. Nowadays, the INO is working with communities in 3 areas of the countryside of Ireland, and each of these 3 communities work also with professional opera practitioners and VR experts to create this new opera together. This whole very ambitious project is entitled Out of the Ordinary, which expresses both the extraordinary experiences offered by VR headsets and also the intention to create a workout of everyday life experiences and stories. The final virtual opera is expected to be presented next year in 2022. Now I will present the second European project, and it's called Mediaverse. Mediaverse is also a 3-year Age 2020 funded project, and it aspires to support new media forms of expression, confronting and blending traditional broadcast with a new media landscape. Actually, I have chosen those 2 because this one is its specific objectives are also very linked to immersive environments. And actually one of them is to introduce novel tools and methods for the next generation media analysis and annotation. Regarding pilots and experiment, Mediaverse aims at carrying out 3 use cases. The first one is a pilot about citizen journalism. The second one, it's a co-creation pilot with the objective of exploring new formats of co-creating media, considering authoring capabilities, accessibility, and diversity. And the third is a STARTS pilot with the objective of assessing the value and use of the project for artistic communities, inspiring new scientific and technical approaches for this so-called next generation media. Moreover, as well as Traction, this project is committed to facilitating the production of accessible media, content, and interfaces for everybody following the EU legislation that we already know a lot about them thanks to Pilar's presentation. Okay, inside this project, this Mediaverse project, a web-based authoring tool called Fader is being developed. And this tool allows non-experts to author stories using easily created 360 images and videos. And now, if I have time, that I think yes, I would like to show you an example of an immersive 360 experience featuring cultural heritage locations in nature near the Catalan city of Banyoles. And I want also to say that it has been created by the Transmedia Catalonia Research Group at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona to celebrate the Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So let me, can you see my screen?
Yes, we see.
But do you see it like the Google or?
No, no, still in the PowerPoint.
So 1 second, let me. Okay, now?
And
Yeah.
video, yes.
Okay, so when we enter this 360 experience, we can navigate through the first video 360 with our mouse, and we can access, here we have different hotspots, and we can access the international sign language. We can also access an audio description. And if we continue, we go to the next 360 scene. This is a 360 video. We have some information about this hill, which is called San Martiria. And we can also have our sign language. And also here, we have the audio description, if we want to listen to it, and different hotspots to go to other videos. So I actually wanted to show you this because, of course, this is a first version of this tool, which is called Fader, as I already said. But well, it's still a long way to get a really good tool which can integrate it actually more 360 content. For example, here, when we access the sign language, this is a 2D video. This is not an immersive content. So we can say that this is a 360 video, but all the hotspots are 2D content. So, but you can see this, we are in the first year of this project. So this is like the first step, and that's why I wanted to share it with you. So going back to my presentation, and sorry, to sum up, we can say, or I can say, that extended reality is here to stay. And it is reinventing our approach to work, to learning, to culture, to social interaction, and individual lifestyle even. And the state of XR technologies today is advanced enough to enable easy, fast, and affordable access for wide audiences. Today, I have presented two European projects that have two things in common. On the one hand, they are coexisting and adapting to this current situation derived from the COVID-19 crisis. And on the other hand, both use immersive environments as a tool to bring culture closer to the population. We can say that one of the main most relevant risks for both projects is the resistance to or dislike of VR, as it is, of course, a new and unknown experience for many users. And the key to solving this issue is basically to ensure a supportive and attentive approach to immersive environments, making sure that all the population and all the participants have the same access to these experiences, these immersive experiences. And to finish, it is important to remember that still, and sadly, technology is designed with accessibility as an afterthought. That means it's away from the user-centered design. And as for every media content, immersive experiences need to be accessible. And one of the main purposes of both Traction and Mediaverse is to bring accessibility to all immersive content generated within the project. And I would like to finish by saying that only promoting the accessibility concepts will it be possible to achieve the full democratic participation of all people with equal access to culture. And that's all from my side. Thank you for listening, and I'll be more than happy to answer any question at the end of the panel.
Ms. Marta, thank you very much for your nice presentation and some demonstration about your project. Very encouraging projects for all sort of human beings who could access the media content in this present world. So I wish all the best despite these COVID difficulties for the success of your project. My simple, it is not like query, just my impression. What are the major challenges that you explain about the different type of devices and people need to be trained for implementing these, using these devices you have mentioned in your presentation? What about like cross-platform accessibility? Because people from different regions may have different type of devices to access your contents. Do you have any plan or any suggestion or any insight about this thing?
Well, actually, this is the next step, because I think we already know that there are a lot of standards in relation of 2D content. For example, if you want to create subtitles for deaf and hard of hearing, or if you want to create another description, you can go to specific standards saying, okay, if you want a quality of service, you should do this, this, and this, and you have a list. And if you follow the recommendation, you will have a good accessibility, a good service with all the accessibility available. But when it comes to this new media, this new immersive media, there is nothing done there, no research. So we don't really know how we can assure that the content is fully accessible, that you can access any immersive content with any device you have. So that's why the European Union is putting a lot of efforts in trying to develop standards regarding accessibility within immersive media. And that's why I wanted to present these two very innovative projects. So I hope in the next year I can give you a better answer to your question.
I think Professor Bista has lost the connection.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Yeah, he's not in the room now, but he will perhaps try again. So let's go to the next presentation in this file, and in the end, let's have a question and answer session. I invite Stella to start her presentation. Stella, if you can.
Yes, hello. I'll share my screen also for the presentation. Before, I'm also part of the research group with Pilar and Marta and Transmedia. I will also start the presentation first with an accessible description of myself. I'm a Mediterranean, I wear glasses, I have short black hair, I'm in my early 40s, and behind me it's a white wall with a painting. So I will share my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. My presentation is closely related to the Pilar's and Marta's presentation. I'm going to present now, they presented projects related to research and innovation, and I'm going to focus on our other line of research, which is training. Now, they've presented the network and the project that we are currently working with, but in order to provide a proper accessibility service, you need to train professionals that can deliver this accessibility. So why is accessibility important? No? According to the European Union, the number of citizens with disabilities will increase significantly, also due to the aging problem that we have in the European Union. 1 in every 6 people, so around 40 million people in the European Union have some form of disability. This makes up 120 million persons, and it is very relevant also to highlight that not all disabilities are visible. So as Pilar mentioned, we started with a medical model, and now we are turning into a more capability model, including all types of people. So an aged person or an elderly person may present different kinds of disabilities: visual, cognitive, linguistic, motor. No? So that's why we have to approach the accessibility from a universal approach. Also, another added problem is that in the recent years, technologies, as we have seen with Marta's presentation, have evolved significantly. The media conversion started with the content. Now it goes into a network, and also the delivery is on the device. This means that all these type of connections have to be provided in an accessible way. It's not only access to the content, but also access to technologies. The accessibility, as mentioned, is accessibility, diversity, and inclusion. So these are the 3 different pillars, no, that has to be taken into consideration when considering accessibility to content and to platforms. In terms of the degree, physical and linguistic accessibility are 2 types of disabilities that have been approached since many years. Now we've turned into the sensorial, which is mainly people with visual impairments or with auditory impairments. And the last one is the people presenting cognitive impairments. So it's not only access to technology, but also access to content from a diverse and inclusive approach. The accessibility services, there are, in terms of accessibility services, there are 4 main accessibility services, which are subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, spoken subtitles or audio subtitles, audio description, and sign language. In addition, in the last years, under-resourced accessibility services are easy to understand language, so easy to read, including different varieties ranging from easy language to plain language, And also, how about web accessibility? No? As we've seen, content has moved into a convergence of networks. So therefore, we have to ensure that users can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the content and contribute to it. In terms of legislation, there was the CRDP, from the United Nations, which was the cornerstone of the legislative framework at the European Union, mainly through 3 directives, and the Web Accessibility Directive, the Audiovisual Media Service Directive, and the European Accessibility Act. I will center the attention into the Audiovisual Media Service Directive, as we are in a cinema conference. Now, the main focus of the directive in terms of accessibility is in Article 7. And within the Article 7, there are 5 different points. No? Service providers have to ensure more accessibility to persons with disabilities. The media service providers have to report on a regular basis to the national authorities and also to the European Commission. And the media service providers are encouraged to develop accessibility in a compliance way. And also, it's important to receive the feedback from the audience. And last but not least, it's the emergency information, no? Has to be provided, especially as we've seen in the COVID-19 situation. All this emergency information has to provide in an accessible manner to ensure that all people, regardless of their disabilities, have access to the content. In terms of transposition, how is this Audiovisual Media Service Directive transposed into the countries? This affects not only the TV broadcasters, which are more traditional channels, but also to video-on-demand platforms. And the European Disability Forum proposes a regular implementation and transposition of the Audiovisual Media Service Directive, no? Ensuring that subtitles can be provided from now until 2024 into 100%. Also in terms of sign language, audio description, and spoken subtitles, which are audio subtitles. In this way, we ensure that a country with now 0 accessibility services can proceed progressively, no, implement all these services. In the European Broadcasting Union, they run reports on a regular basis. 72% of the organizations provide could be so-called traditional accessibility services, which are subtitling mainly, audio description, and sign language. In terms of audio subtitling, this service is less provided than subtitling, audio description, or sign programs. No? And with the addition also of the online accessibility services. One of the most provided access services is subtitling. But one of the main problems that broadcasters face is the limited human capacities. It's a heavy workload, and they have to train professionals. So this highlights the need to train more professionals in the accessibility field. Also, this is the same case in the video-on-demand platforms, which are increasing. It's a booming effect. No? More and more video-on-demand platforms are in the market, and access to content, again, has to be ensured. So, Transmedia Catalonia has, in the last 10 years, participated in Erasmus Plus projects, which are training programs co-financed by the European Union. The main detected problems is that there is an increasing legislation, as we've seen since 2006, through the UN CRDP, to increase accessibility, no, to content, to media content. Most of the training has to be provided in-house because there is a missing certification in terms of academic and vocational training. There is also a need to adapt to current labor market needs. And these accessibility professionals also need to acquire more and more digital skills as there is an increasing convergence to the web. So the detected needs are the need to define the profiles of new professionals, define also their skills, because this is also very important, develop proper training materials, and these allow for bridging the gap between the vocational and academic training. So we have, Transmedia Catalonia has participated in different 6 European Plus projects, Erasmus Plus projects, sorry. The finished Erasmus Plus projects are AtLab, which aim at providing guidelines for the audio description. This was turned into a second advanced AtLab Pro, in which training materials in an open resource basis are provided. And also a finished project is ACT, which is access to culture. And in this particular project, open resource materials are provided in order to ensure what is called the accessibility chain. Accessibility is not only access to content, but it belongs to a process. Accessibility is part of a process. So you have to ensure that a venue is accessible, that contents to the venue are accessible, and you also have to ensure that the feedback from users is taken into account in order to improve the accessibility services. The current Erasmus Plus projects that we are now involved in, and for which we are now providing training materials, is first the LTA project with live text access. As we've seen, subtitling is one of the accessibility services more developed, but how about live subtitling? So one thing is that you have to provide access to a movie, which is pre-recorded and you have time to prepare the subtitles, but how about live events, no? Like the Oscar ceremony? You also have to provide accessibility to the audience. Then we have the EASY project. The EASY project is centered in to provide easy to understand language in an audiovisual context. And finally, we are also involved in the Impact project, in which accessibility is at a transversal level to ensure mainly access to the service, not only to the content, but also to the service in itself, which is also stated in the European Accessibility Act, in the Web Accessibility Directive, and they both, and in the Audiovisual Media Service Directive, and they are all linked to the an European standard, which is the EN 301-549. I don't have the time to explain or to enter into detail, but the standard allows users and professionals to integrate accessibility and know how to do it. So what are these Erasmus Plus projects aimed at, and which solutions are provided? Well, these Erasmus Plus projects are divided in different stages, and in each stage, the outputs fit into the next stage. No? The first stage is always a mapping of the current situation, not only in terms of training, but also in terms of practice. This allows to bridge a gap between the academia and the professional needs. Also, it allows to generate recommendations for audiovisual content, which then fits into the definition of new professional profiles. And the proper skills will also be defined and fit into the provision of training materials. All these Erasmus Plus projects have a common structure in terms of educational content. They all provide first video lectures in which professionals and trainers provide definition of accessibility concepts and accessibility services. And these video lectures are provided in an accessible way with a transcript and subtitles, and also with audio description. The audio description is integrated within the video lectures. And there is also a definition of the tasks and assessment. So the trainees can assess the acquired knowledge. And there is also an available reading list and additional materials in order to improve or increase knowledge on accessibility. Most of the programs also provide certification And the courses and training materials developed have been created according to defined European standards. No? For instance, the standards for quality assurance in higher education, the CDFOP guidelines to define right and apply learning outcomes. And in most of the projects, we have also linked European Certification and Qualification Association. This allows also the resilience of the project and allows also to verify that quality standards are met. No? It's and integrates formal and informal learning to address life learning processes. So as a conclusion, there is the accessibility route, no? In which the start is the legislation. There is a need of a communication between the market and the academia. This ensures first an access to the technology. As the next step is the access to content. It allows also a best practice exchange between different professionals in the accessibility field. An added issue and a very important topic is to receive audience feedback. And this is such, the accessibility route is such a large route that it's to be continued. So this is it. Here you have the different projects, mentions to the projects and grant agreements. And if you have any question, I will be delighted to answer you.
Thank you very much, Professor Stella Onsins. Very nice to see your some projects objectives, and roadmap is very interesting. So I have just some curiosity, like while selecting the people for training for this your technology, are there any criteria for the participants? Any criteria? They must have some kind of prerequisite skills.
No, so it's they need to have an interest in acquiring accessibility training.
Okay.
Depending on, so all these projects have different units, and each unit is related to different skills. So for instance, if you want to provide subtitles, you need a good command of the language.
Language, right.
This is very important.
Okay. So I actually wanted to know the same thing, because it depends on the willingness of or interest of the participants in which domain he or she would like to get training. Okay, is this so based on his interest, you have designed different units?
There are different projects. One is on audiovisual, on audio description. Another one is on live subtitling. Another one is a manager in accessibility for a venue, for a festival, for example. No, you have a film festival, and you have to make sure that accessibility is taken into consideration already from the beginning. So you have to adapt your venue in an accessible way. So, and we have the ACT project, for instance, provides you the training, no, in order to a professional know which are the different steps to take into consideration for providing an accessible festival.
Okay, very nice presentation. I wish you all the very best for your different projects.
Thank you very much.
Really happy to see so many things from University of Barcelona.
And the materials are open source, so everybody can access them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to see your presentation and different aspects of digital accessibility or digital to bridge the gap between the professionals and technology. You have currently running many projects, so it is like a kind of empowering the human resource for using technology in the society. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I think we have now last presenter, Miss. No, I'm sorry, Professor Anna Matamala. So I do not have.
No, sorry. My presentation is a shared presentation between myself and Anna Matamala.
Okay.
This was a shared presentation.
Okay, so.
I also would like to ask a question from Stella. If I think that now the presentations are over, we can open a session for Q&A, questions, answers. I see that Claudia Martinez also wants to ask a question. Claudia, you want to continue because you asked previously if you want to ask your question first. I will wait.
Hi, thanks. I'd like to thank you for all your wonderful presentations. I hope you can hear me. It's a bit noisy around here. I'm really, really happy to see how many projects you have, because the people from Barcelona are always extremely active. So it's always a surprise. I think I'm almost getting to know all of your projects, but you're still involved in different ones. And I did get some very interesting ideas from you. So I might be contacting Marta for some ideas later, if you don't mind. And I would like to address my question to Pilar Orero, if you don't mind. I was very interested in the Lead Me network that you were referring to. And I was wondering if there's any way we can participate. I've seen that Portugal is part of the network. I'm not really sure if it's only one institution per country, or if there is the possibility of other institutions getting involved. It would be extremely interesting for us to participate, if there is a possibility, of course. And just wanted to add something, and picking up the final idea that Stella was saying about the accessible festival from the start, which that would be, let's say, the ideal approach to any sort of event, of course. And I was just wanted to inform you, so to speak, let you know that the Avanca Film Festival started last year with a very small drive-in session with accessible films, which is what they call an extension of another festival, which was started in 2019, sorry, in Bragança, in the Polytechnic. And this year we have a full session with audio description and subtitling for deaf and hard of hearing in one of the local cinema houses. So, very small steps. And as Estella said, the accessibility route is to be continued. And hopefully in the future, we can provide all these resources from the start. Okay, that's it. I'm not sure if I explained myself correctly.
Thank you very much. Yes, you can hear me. Thank you very much for being so kind and addressing us. Yes, in fact, it would be fantastic if Portugal, if you would become, or Avanca would become partners for the cost. We have only one person, it's two people per country, and we only have one representative from Portugal. And not only with 2 people per country, we can also have people added as observers or participants. So yes, there is plenty of room for participating and for being active. And for example, we have the winter school organized in Madrid this in November. But perhaps you would be interested in organizing next year, next to Avanca, the accessibility Avanca. And for that, you would have money. So it could be like a side conference where people then reflect about Avanca and how they've made Avanca accessible. And for that, there is money for it. And it would be perhaps the summer school after the winter school. And I would be delighted if you would please do that, because I really like this venue and it's fascinating. Thank you very much.
I will definitely talk to you later if you don't mind, something of the sort. Thank you very much for the suggestions.
Thank you, Claudia. I also have a similar question to Claudia, but for Stella, that if this project was only for Spain or if other countries in Europe are also part of this?
Well, the Erasmus Plus projects are joint projects with different European countries. The issue is that the resources are mainly made in English. And then in some cases, subtitles are provided in different languages. But the materials are in English, all of them. So I don't know if I answered your question, but this would be...
Actually, if the materials are in English, I understand that is to be universal. But also, I wanted to know that if people want to join this program, if from other countries are also, it's possible or not. Some similar question to what Claudia asked. I have.
The issue is that it's not, these Erasmus Plus projects are closed projects. So you submit a project, an Erasmus Plus project, and then you join a consortium. It's not that you create a network. So in the case that you would be interested in presenting a new Erasmus Plus project, then we can speak and see which area to address in terms of accessibility. So it is possible to prepare a new proposal, but not to join the existing projects. So you can join as a stakeholder in terms of interest if you want. I can add you to the mailing list of all projects, so you can follow and participate in the project as a stakeholder, but not as a partner. It's different.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understood. Thank you. I would be grateful. Thanks. If anybody else has any question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to ask some questions about accessibility and also effectivity, because I have the impression that this accessibility discussed in the room is, if I'm understanding well, is like in juridic and technical terms, right? Like you have a juridic framework to how to say, to make available the accessibility to of cinema, for example. What I wonder is how it could be achieved maybe in a more utopian sense. Like, for example, what I observe from, for example, Europe, especially Germany, where I'm living, China, Russia, and Iran, for example, here is like you have the legal protections of the copyrights and everything of the films, and like China is doing better now in terms of copyright, but still, like as I'm from Macau, what we did like 10 years ago, if I want to see a film in a cheaper price, I just cross the border, because there's still border between China and Macau. I just cross the border and buy this pirate DVDs for €1. And here, if we want in Germany, it's very protected. So there's no way, if I'm super poor, there's no way for me to always to rent or to buy. So for me, the only way is to go to the library. They have a very good, everywhere in the whole city, they have a very good network of libraries that they almost have everything. And maybe my question is how to extend this to even to this accessibility to, in terms of in financial terms, like the people who don't even have the how to say the lowest financial conditions, like for example people who want to see films but they even don't have the money to buy the library card, for example. This is my first question. I think it's very important if we really want to make, for example, cinema accessible to literally everyone. And I have another question about VR or XR. This is my first time that I heard about XR. And actually, one of my biggest concern is like we are talking through a Zoom meeting, and like yesterday, I also thought it would be nice to talk to you and just to be close and just to have a coffee together. And my biggest concern is if we still confront all this pandemic or this quarantine or this border limitations throughout, maybe for more time, or maybe it comes more unexpected events like eventual war in a short period of time. And if we all have this, even have a bigger lockdown, how we invent affectivity through a screen, or even with how to say this, a VR glass, how can we achieve? Maybe this is more a question for Marta. And for example, what I understand is like to use computer, like internet, as how to achieve affectivity quickly. One of the things in my head is to have sexual arousal, like you watch pornography or something like that, to achieve this quick affective connections to something that is somehow maybe you're watching a live or you're watching a film. But how can we invent other less exciting experience, affective experience through computer or even a virtual glass, because it's more about a visual rather than like touching or speaking. Because even when we talk in a cafe, we keep some physical distance, but still there this aura of each person, this smell, everything. And how can we more effectively, this may be my question, how to Marta, is how we could, Marta, right? Sorry. Yeah, Marta.
Yeah.
How we can achieve a more effective affectivity through technology. And this is very important because when we lock down, when we are locked down, we can't see anyone. And how can we have a more intimate, not necessarily sexual, maybe to have the same feeling of having a coffee on the street, but we are with a computer. And
okay.
This
First,
is my two questions for Marta, Pilar,
and Stella.
Estela.
Okay, first, I think we, Pilar, Stella, and we agree that media accessibility is not an academic concept. Actually, it is a human right. So it's like the right to have a home. I mean, right now it is at the same level. Okay, so but it's true, and it's sad that most time we forget about that people, and they are invisible for the rest of the society who don't suffer or who don't need special requirements to access media content. So that's the first my first answer. And the second, of course it's interesting, but I think it's logical that because of the COVID-19 situation, there are a lot of people, a lot of I don't know, institution thinking about developing these immersive experience devices and content, because now we are experiencing this new normal, and as you say, we are now having a meeting in Zoom and it's not a face-to-face meeting, sadly. And that's actually the point where we are right now. How can culture meet these immersive experiences, these new technologies? And that's what we are now actually researching in all these projects that we have presented today. Of course, we have ideas, but it's true that nowadays the most of them are very expensive or not available for in the market. But there are experiences with touch, with gloves, and you can experience this feeling also. But as I'm telling you, we are now trying to know how we can implement all these accessibility rules, all these requirements in these new technologies. How can we do that? And for example, traction, which is working with Opera. Opera is like an even old-fashioned, if in some cases, but it's also a high culture. It's well known because of that. So that's like our main purpose, is how can we make opera accessible for different communities who cannot or who are not really interested in opera because of different reasons, because of they cannot afford it, for example. How can we use these new technologies to take this classical concept of opera and have it closer to these different groups I have been talking about? And with Mediaverse, is not with the case of opera, but in general, how is this new media landscape, this new environment we are experiencing today, how can culture meet this new world at the end? So we have the same questions that you already have, and that's what we are trying to answer with our research. And I don't know if Stella or Pilar wants to add something, but
no, I think it's beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your presentations. We need to, in 2 minutes, we have to start the next panel. It was an amazing panel. I really enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Very much. Very nice to see you all. I may be visiting Spain and Portugal because I have a couple of Erasmus Plus project, but it is related to IT, information technology. So let's hope I'll remember all your legend presenters in mind, and whenever I will visit, I may contact you. Please do not feel worry about that time. And you are always welcome to Nepal. Please feel free to contact me, and you can get my information from our organization of the conference. So please feel free to visit Nepal. Nepal is a beautiful country, but after COVID, not now, after COVID.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Bista. Thank you, everyone.
Last time I host one famous professor here at Kathmandu University. It was nice meeting with him. So please feel free to visit our country. Thank you very much. It was really nice, and I learned so many things about cinemas and this technology development and application of technology in cinema, because I'm core IT person, computer science person. So I may not have like a detailed interaction with the feeling of culture and cinema, society, psychology, such kind of thing I'm lacking. I'm sorry for that, but I feel very proud to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you all. Professor Jean Souza.
Yes, well, I'm here.
Yes, we can start this panel. Sorry for the delay, but we are at least on the hour, on
We
time.
are just on time, yes.
Yeah.
So we're ready to start, right?
Yes, of course.
I don't know if all the presenters are there, maybe. So we have Chanka, yes.
Yes, hello.
Maria João Carvalho. Where is Maria João? Can't see her. And Ribeiro Santovares. Ok.
Emanuel, João.
Aí, Manuel.
Manuel.
Ah, espera. Manuel Carvalho, exato, eu estava aqui com isto minimizado e não estava a ver tudo. Miguel também já está. E o Luís Miguel também estará ou não? Adriana, vais apresentar alguma coisa? Som.
Presento a primeira.
Ah, ok. So,
Pero acho que este é o panel que eu apresento. É em francês?
Is English.
what is the title? Because this is not your panel, I suppose. Because the
No,
first...
it's I think it's the right panel. It's in English. If you are in a French panel, it's not here. You have to go to the other room.
Okay, I have to go to another room. Okay. Until I go.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you have to open the red link.
Okay.
The red link. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, we have the first presenter is there, and also the last one. Now continues and the second. I can see the third presenter. So,
Yes, sir.
Mo, should we wait a little bit more or can we start?
I think it's better to start if the third presenter enters. Then in the end,
Yes, I'm here.
His...
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. So we are just about to start session number 7. We have a lot of sessions. This is, again, a very, very interesting session. And the first one, the title of the first one is The Limitless Possibility of Combination, Filmic Lego Poetics of Storytelling and Structures in Global Film Script Writing and Duration. And the presentation will be given by Chanka. This is the correct way to pronounce your name?
Chanka Chanka.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
So, Giancarlo, you can start. My suggestion is try to do it in 20-25 minutes. And this way we can save, let's say, between 20 to 30 minutes for the discussion at the end of the presentations. Okay?
Okay, no problem. Okay, thank you. Hello. Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my presentation. I'm Giancarlo Sobel. I'm from Hong Kong, Academy of Film, School of Communication. Because I'm teaching about how to write a script for about 20 years, so I'm always wonder how to construct a film, and because film structure is, I think, is the most important part or the most professional part in screenwriting. So I'm always thinking about this part, and my student always asking me, what is the difference between short film, feature film, documentary, about focus on the structure? So this question and inquiry inspired me to think about this paper. Okay. Feature film is the most limited to 19 minutes to in Chinese language film, to about 120 minutes in Western film, Hollywood film, in length and duration, and they are popular summarizing in several film structure like 3-act, 4-act, 5-act structure. John Truby, story anatomy, Brick Slider, Bishit, Christopher Waller, Hero Journey, Paul Sequence, Paul, etc. The well-established film structure is well tested and practiced in feature film industry in terms of proof from box office, film comments, and audience likeness. It is so popular as it does suit the taste and viewing habit of the most general audience. However, it also limits the unlimited possibility of film structure and storytelling in another angle, and how we perceive the film story itself concept is. Therefore, this original paper would explore the interactive relationship and poetics between the length, duration, and film storytelling and structure in a metaphysical and aesthetic form. If we can challenge the traditional film structure form, it may enlighten or explore the possibility of film art and our perception of story. It may not just be about problem and solution pattern in my paper. Everything can be possible, like the Lego as film art is still very young in art historical aspect. Therefore, the paper challenged our traditional sense of frame, scenes to sequence concept. It also challenged our long-established understanding of how we view the film in 90 minutes to 120 minutes duration. Okay, now I go a very quick review of the previous scholar how to understand the film structure. The first one is very famous. Robert McKee, the story triangle. Classical design. Art plot means a story built around an active protagonist who struggles against the primarily external forces of antagonist to pursue his or her desire. Through continuous time within a consistent and causally connected fictional reality to a close ending or absolute irreversible change. Most film program, the film school, okay, focus on art plots actually. For mini plot and enterplot, art plot is not about commercial or art. It is so popular because it is originated from the human nature in daily life. Story premise. What will happen if, what is the story problem? The story problem is story premise. That is why we need to listen to the story development, how to solve the problems, the story problem in the end. For example, Jaws. What will happen next if shark is appearing in the beach, and the important thing is it will kill people? For a long time, different films scriptwriter and scholar tries very hard to study and practice how to tell the story best, in what format or pattern or structure a story can be told in the best effect. And actually, the meaning of the best is rather arguable and problematic, as some story, especially the mainstream Hollywood films, are more suitably told in a more popular or entertaining way, while some story, especially European film, French film, Taiwan new cinema, some independent Chinese cinema should be told in rather alternative ways, like slice of life or streams of subconsciousness, or even an experimental approach. In a nutshell, art plot story from Robert McKee term is better told in traditional film structure, 3-act structure, hero journey, beat sheet, sequence, method, and story, and anatomy. On the other hand, mini plot is better told in slice of life ways. For example, A One and a Two, directed by Edward Young, one of the most important Taiwan new cinema film director. This film winning the best director in Cannes Film Festival. Slice of life film structure and storytelling is seemingly arbitrary sequence of events in a character life is presented, often lacking plot development, conflict, and exposition, as well as often having an open ending, as life is still going. In One and a Two, there is Yi. The duration of Yi is near 3 hours. Its duration is about 2 times of the so-called normal 19 minutes feature film. It makes us reflect what the duration of film should last. If the duration of film greatly affects the type of story chosen and how the story is told, how long it should be, Yi revolves around major stages of life. There is from the children birth, and then growing up, and then marriage, and then full moonlight, and then puberty, and affair in the middle age crisis, working pressure, etc. And then to the end is the funeral, etc. Film structure from the beginning to of the wedding to the end of the funeral. Yi is a multiple storyline around the family member. In the story, there are several sub-storylines. Movies are not simply a reproduction of life, nor the reproduction of daily life that we see with the physical eye. If this is the case, our lives would be fine. Why should we watch movies exactly like our lives? Instead, Director Young presents the hidden meaning of daily life that he had insight into with his heart and the soul. The so-called art is originated from light and is above the rim of light. Light is like the ripples on the calm lake, woven in a net by accidental event. Daily life film structure and storytelling is more suitable for family drama and setting in a rather slow pace of living style like Taiwan, some European city like France, Germany, etc. In Hong Kong cinema, I think Anne Hui's A Simple Life and Summer Slow are good examples of daily life film, but most of the Hong Kong movie is not suitable in daily life film because Hong Kong, the pace of Hong Kong is very fast. Alternative film structure for enterprise story. Alternative film structure can be referring to the non-linear narrative. In most cases, it emphasizes on non-casual logic and occasional happenings. The time and pace of events can be shattered and reorganized into new ordering. Sometimes all flashback, flash forward, memory, fantasy can be mixed freely, while enterprise is more suitably told in stream of subconsciousness or experimental way as possible as it can be. One famous example must be last year in Marie and Beth. The story itself is enterprise and it like a mystery and metaphor. It is very hard to understand the enterprise story itself only, and even harder to understand with the stream of subconsciousness. It makes up the memory, present time, future, fantasy, dreaming, nightmare in a totally freedom form in non-linear time and pace. For some filmmaker, they would creatively tell the upward story by stream of subconsciousness, like the Diving Bell and Butterfly, Inception, Memento, Tenant, 2046, Being John McCormick, The Spotless Mind of Eternal Sunshine, etc. Traditionally, a story in a film is computed by the whole film duration, and each scene is linked or edited with each scene to construct a whole film story. Each scene is a mini story indeed. What if a single scene is like the single brick in Lego? That means it is so neutral in the sense it can mix and match together to create the unlimitless possibility of combination of film structure far beyond the framework or of linear or non-linear narration and structure in the past. In doing so, the concept of film story would be also changed or goes into a new horizon with new imagination and creativity. And eventually, the film duration could also be altered based on the shape on filmic Lego poetics. The breadth and depth of story type and genre would also be greatly changed and broadened. So in my paper, I originally bring out these new terms is the filmic Lego poetics. That means each scene of the film is like the single brick in Lego, and it is so neutral and can mix and match together to create a new form of film. Okay, finally, in contemporary times, many famous film directors understand the critical point for a good movie is not just to tell a story. The key crucial point is how to tell a story effectively. In particular, Christopher Nolan, the British film director who has the highest salary for a contemporary global film director, he fully understands this well and does not stick to the traditional narrative technique. He has already played a narrative game in his Linka film Memento, asking the audience to go into a maze to reorganize the memory of the murderer, of the protagonist who is suffering from transient amnesia. This idea is already awesome in itself. The most innovative thing is to break the logic of the usual audience watching movie. That is, black and color scene is the forward sequence, while the color scene is the flashback. Okay, it's a flashback. Okay, this is totally different from our past perception of film ordering. Other well-known examples, talent is also playing on the reverse temporal narration. And then another one, the double life of Veronica 2046 in the Move for Love. This is also other example of how to do something new in our film narrative. So this is my presentation. Very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the very nice presentation. As
Thank you.
said, I guess we should save some time for discussion in the end of this session. So please stay with us to attend the remaining presentation and also, of course, to participate in the discussion. So next presentation will be given by Manuel Coutinho, and the title of the presentation is Adapting Hunter S. Thompson's Writing to Cinema, Despicable Characters and Apparent Lack of Purpose. So, Manuel Coutinho, can go.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Okay, and hopefully you're watching the PowerPoint presentation by now.
Everything is okay.
And everything's okay. So, hello everyone. So I'm presenting my paper on adapting Hunter S. Thompson writing to cinema, specifically concerning two movies, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and The Room Diary. For those that don't know, Hunter S. Thompson was a journalist and a novelist who rose to fame in the 1960s and 70s, starting with his book Hell's Angels. As his fame diminished in the 80s, he again became the subject of attention when his book Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was adapted into a movie in 1998. Now, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is a difficult movie to analyze, and it's definitely not for everyone. Drugs, alcohol, paranoia, and self-destruction are constant, and the main characters are, for all intents and purposes, despicable and have an apparent lack of purpose. Since the first time I saw the movie, I was intrigued, and at the end, I wanted to see more movies like it. So I did what most people do. I searched for that magic algorithm of the internet and looked for good suggestions. These suggestions, however, were not all great. Some directed me to movies with the same main actor, Johnny Depp. Others suggested movies by the same director, Terry Gilliam, known for its fantastic and surreal film aesthetic. Suggestions for movies similar to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas guided me towards movies with related ideas and themes, like the freedom of the road and the vibe of the 70s and 80s in America. Or the opposite way, with movies with paranoia and violence. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas also had a large dose of alcohol, and here the suggestions were diverse, with examples of both comedy and drama. And of course, the drug abuse also pointed me to some heavy hitters and most troubling movies. The various lists of suggested movies like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas were so different from one another that it was curious that despite these differences, there was always the same one movie in each list, The Room Diary. But both movies are quite different from one another. The connection between them is obvious, since they were adapted from two books by Hunter S. Thompson, each maintaining the same title of the original novel. When The Room Diary was released in 2011, it was, like I said, the second movie adapted from a Hunter S. Thompson novel. But it was not the second movie about Hunter S. Thompson. In fact, the writer had been the subject of other movies, like the 1980 Where the Buffalo Roam, where Bill Murray plays Hunter, and several other documentaries. These documentaries sought to understand this individual that is, still today, subject of so many analysis and admiration, despite his difficult and troubling persona. Concerning Hunter S. Thompson's life, we can clearly find the origins of his oddity and strangeness. Considered to be a promising writer as a teenager, Hunter was handpicked by his English teacher to write for a prestigious literary association. And in his writing as a teenager, you can already see his rebelling demeanor. In 1956, right before his graduation, he is sentenced to 60 days in jail for being an accessory to a robbery. And while in jail, he is unable to graduate. 1 week after being released, he joins the United States Air Force. 1 year later, he is honorably discharged from the Air Force and spends the next 2 years, from 1957 to 1959, moving from one publication to the next. In 1959, he lands a job in Puerto Rico, and he starts writing about his experiences there in a book he titles The Room Diary. 5 years later, in December 1964, the editor of the weekly The Nation inquires Hunter on the possibility of writing about the Hells Angels motorcycle club, an opportunity that will bring him fame. By this time, his book, The Room Diary, was indefinitely put on hold. For the next decade, Hunter S. Thompson continued to develop his frantic style of writing. By 1974, and moving forward, it is commonly agreed that his career began to drop as he focused more on writing columns while dealing with a growing depression. By 1998, he found fame again, against all odds, when his book, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, was made into a movie. The same year, he finally finished The Room Diary. The interesting thing about this book, that he started writing in 1959, was that the book was sitting on a shelf at Hunter's place for more than 30 years. And apparently, actor Johnny Depp found it one day when he was spending time with Hunter. For the next couple of years, Hunter and Johnny Depp tried to make The Room Diary into a movie with no success. In 2005, Hunter S. Thompson puts an end to his life, and the dream of adapting the novel, The Room Diary, stops. To have a glimpse of Hunter S. Thompson's novels, in order to understand how difficult it can be to adapt them to cinema, we first have to consider his writing style and its literary roots. Hunter is often associated with what we call the New Journalism, journalistic movement that sought to change long-form journalism in America and, at the time, featured some of the best journalists in the 1960s and 70s in USA. This movement, however, received criticism due to its subjective nature and focus on truth over facts. And, as the years passed, many journalists who supported the movement no longer wanted to be associated with it. Hunter S. Thompson, however, doubled down and moved forward with his own style of writing, named Gonzo, further emphasizing his persona at the center of his work, with drugs, alcohol, and a mix of paranoia as part of his prevailing style. Several journalists were influenced by Hunter's Gonzo, although ultimately there was always a sense of doubt while reading Gonzo journalism, and, at times, it is common to believe one is reading a work of total fiction instead of non-fiction. So, how do you adapt this paranoid and frenetic voice into the big screen? For the first movie based on one of his books, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the result was exactly that, a trip of a movie that based its imagery directly through Ralph Steadman's drawings. Hunter would often hire the artist Ralph Steadman to work with him, preferring his journalistic work to be accompanied by Steadman's drawing instead of photographs. These photographs and others, here on screen, featured on the original 1998 book. Consider, for example, the scene depicting the orgy of reptiles at the casino, here with the original drawing and the scene in the movie, one of the craziest moments. The director Terry Gilliam, known for its surreal style, made this movie and others faithfully to Hunter's crazy drug-infused narrative, while being as close as possible to the drawings. While the movie was not a commercial success, it did gain a cult following over the years, and the interest in Hunter S. Thompson's book rose at the time. Following that wave of success and rediscovering his long-lost novel, The Room Diary, Hunter was convinced to finish it, and, in his own words, he was interested in making some money out of it, especially during that time of 1998, while the public was again interested in him and his books. The original book, however, had been untouched at its place for more than 30 years, and, as some editors that worked with Hunter noted, the process of editing and finishing the book was a painful process at times. Hunter was 60 years old then, and his view on his work was critical, since he considered his 22-year-old voice that was immortalized in the original manuscript as somewhat naive and hopeful. There is this YouTube video, the one that I'm quoting in this PowerPoint, where you follow part of this process with Hunter, and you see his clear reluctance in accepting his younger self. In one particular moment, one editor of the publishing company working with him was reading one of the passages of the book, and Hunter, listening to him, reacts almost disgusted, while with his juvenile writing style, wishing to cut that part out of the final book. The editor stands her ground, stating that she loves that part and it should be kept in. Hunter accepts it and replies loudly, and I quote, "Well, at 22, you can write shit like that," end quote. Now, while Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is a loose work of journalism with a sort of real background and characters with Ralph Steadman's drawings to set the scene, The Room Diary, on the other hand, is a work of fiction altogether. The novel's main characters are Paul Kemp and Yemen, who have the novel's biggest focus, and then there is Chanel, Yemen's girlfriend. The interesting thing with the novel is that while Hunter S. Thompson is not a character in his book, as he tends to be in all his novels, still in The Room Diary, the main two characters are incredibly close to him and his personality, as a young and frustrated journalist / writer. It is often said that every writer's first novel is the most autobiographical, and The Room Diary is no exception. In this book, we follow Paul Kemp, a journalist sent to work in a newspaper in Puerto Rico, in a publication that is about to go bankrupt. When Kemp arrives, he meets Yemen, a troubled journalist who has a hard time writing for the newspaper, and his superiors are upset with his work as of late. Paul Kemp, on the other hand, is a talented writer who gets the attention of other publications on the island and is soon tasked with picking up and polishing Yemen's writing duties. As Yemen feels unfulfilled and misunderstood, he violently lashes out on Chanel, his girlfriend. With all this in mind, we could say that the author, Hunter S. Thompson, is both Kemp and Yemen, as Hunter S. Thompson himself admitted. He is the talented writer being sent to write in a desperate publication far away, mainly because he can't hold his liquor and temper. So he has no long-term ambitions as he walks through life. Yemen is his other side. He is ambitious and has a girl that loves him, but he blames everyone for his misfortunes and often disregards his journalistic duties while not appreciating what he has. This duality on both characters has an interesting subtext, and a movie adapting this novel might have a hard time dealing with these two characters so close to one another. So the 2011 movie does something different. They eliminate the character of Yemen altogether, and in its place, they put the character of Sanderson, a secondary character of the original novel, an individual that is rich and whose sole desire is to become richer, while exploiting the locals of Puerto Rico. By reinforcing this idea that is secondary in the novel, the movie aims to give purpose to the characters in the Room Diary, a purpose that was there originally as self-discovery, but that the movie changes into the search for journalistic truth, nature, and the love interest Chenault, a token, almost a prize for the winner. Because Sanderson is an overall evil character and Kemp a likable but lost individual, there is no complexity in both characters. Because the interesting contrast between both characters of Kemp and Yemen is not there, as the book sought to explore, the movie is a different thing altogether from the start. The novel, Chenault was in love with the poor, down-to-earth, and failed writer that was Yemen, and she sees in Kemp what his boyfriend was once, a talented writer, albeit lost and naive at times. In the movie, Chenault, here at the center image, is dating the rich guy on the right, and there's clearly nothing more than a trophy wife that later on acts wildly to escape her prison life. It is natural to sympathize with her and wish her best, but we do so in spite of her lack of character and not because of her character, like the book goes for. The movie thus follows the common trope of a love triangle. Kemp here on the left is portrayed in the movie as a journalist that wants to fight for journalism and for the locals of Puerto Rico, while at the same time wanting to party and have a good time, thus making this strange subtext void of meaning or depth. As I here argue, adapting the novel The Room Diary was a difficult job, and in the end, it was not done with the desire to be faithful to the book, the most biographical work of Hunter S. Thompson, but it was done as an effort to pay homage to an older Hunter S. Thompson, the one that published the book in his 60s, and not the one who originally wrote it in his 20s, before reaching fame. The movie adapts the work of a writer, a younger Hunter S. Thompson in this case, while being enamored by the old and altogether different Hunter. And what I find interesting in this process of adapting the novel was that as the movie took form, the original book seemed to slowly be put to the side. At the same time, the movie seeks to give him a happy ending and making him out to be a defender of journalism, respected by his community, and with the perfect girl that he rescued from the clutches of his villain boyfriend. In the novel, all of this is different. The main character is not a defender of journalism, and for all we know, he continued to work in different publications while self-sabotaging, like Hunter S. Thompson did throughout most of his life. And he also doesn't get the girl in the end, leaving their fate as ambiguous in the book. As a love letter to Hunter S. Thompson, the movie works in some places, and it's a good companion to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. As a way to conclude, and anticipating the question later on, I wonder if any of you can remember another movie that adapted a novel and that was so heavily influenced by the older author that it changed the source material altogether, as this movie did. With that in mind, and for what it's worth, I recommend both the novel and the book and the movie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, for a very, very nice presentation. And for the last presentation, I don't see the presenter here, Luis Miguel Ribeiro Santovares. Is someone representing or replacing Luis? No. So I suppose the last presentation will be cancelled. Right, Mo?
Yes, sir. He's not here.
So that's a pity, but since Luis is not here, So we have plenty of time now for a discussion, and this is curious because somehow I guess both presentation are complementary. I will say. Because in the first one, okay, the author present as an overview of the evolution, we can say, of script writing. And in the second one, we can perceive how we can adapt an author's work to cinema. And in my opinion, at least, both presentation, both work are somehow related. But I would like to launch some questions for discussion. And I would like to start directly to presenter one, to the first one. I guess we all agree that there are differences between Hollywood and European movies. I suppose we all agree on this. So in this, is this exclusively related to the way that both schools, allow me to use the word schools. So I was saying, is this exclusively related to the way both schools perceived the cinema? I mean, Hollywood focus in a commercial way, and European or French school in an artistic way. What do you think?
Thank you, Chair.
You understood my point.
My observation or my opinion is that for traditional movie, that means for the most popular movie, maybe 3-act or 4-act or 5-act or bit this kind of structure is very useful for that kind of movie, because that kind of structure is emphasized on problem, and then how the protagonist solving the problem, and then at the end, as audience, we look at whether the problem is solved or how the problem is solved. In a very nutshell, it is very simple, but it is also very useful or very effective, because our daily life is like this. Our daily life is facing many different kind of problem, and then the process is how to deal with, how to overcome the problem. For example, like the COVID-19, this is the big problem for all the people in the goal, and then this the act 1, and then now is act 2, because now is our process to facing this this pandemic, and then we will come into act 3 whether the pandemic will be solved or still going. We still need to live with the virus forever. Okay, we don't know. So it may be an open ending. We don't know. Okay, so I think back to the film storytelling, this kind of problem, and then how to solve the problem, and then see the problem is solved or not, is very popular. But another kind of observation is that, because some kind our life is not like that, because sometimes our life is like the slice of life, because sometimes our life is very illogical, or we very hard to find the very hard to find the cause and effect relationship in our life, but it has some hidden relationship or hidden connection, like slice of life. This kind of life pattern. So I think this kind of life pattern is very more effective or used in some cinema city like Taiwan, because people living in Taiwan is very slow, and then they focus on their family relationship, their family value. So so they will not only focus on the problem and then solution, they will focus on human relationship, the interaction between humans. And also Chinese family very emphasized on human relationship. So slice of life is is more preferable in Taiwan, especially in Taiwan, not in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong, the pacing of Hong Kong is super fast. Okay, it's super fast. Everybody need to handle many different things just in 1 hour and overcome many problems. So in Hong Kong film, we will see the popular film must be gangster film, must be kung fu, must be action film. This is a kind of problem and then solution pattern, something like that. Okay, and then I also bring about the consciousness, because my viewpoint is that, for example, Christopher Nolan, his film Memento, from the topic, from the story itself, it can be a very popular film, because just a husband to chasing the murderer, but the way of how to tell the story is very alternative. He used a kind of streams of subconsciousness. So one thing is the story itself is mainstream, but how to tell the story is very alternative. It can mix together and have a very new chemistry to us. Okay, this why Christopher Nolan is very successful. And my original viewpoint is that actually we can think that each scene in cinema can be very neutral, like the brick in Lego, and then each scene can be mixed and matched together with another brick, another scene, that means another scene, and then create a new form of cinema, or new way of storytelling in cinema. Okay, that is my thinking, my thought. Because in original is our long history of film history, scene and scene must be some connection, a cause and effect connection, or a montage connection, some kind of connection. So scene per scene become a sequence per sequence become an act, and act plus act become a whole film. But my thinking is that maybe each scene itself can be neutral, can be independent, but it can also mix and match with another scene to make a new shape or new form of cinema. It may be some possibility of the future of cinema. This is my thinking.
Okay,
thank you.
Giancarlo. I would like to remind those who are following us on YouTube that they can use the chat to make comments or ask questions. Okay, and
okay.
then Mo can read them for the presenters to comment or to answer. Okay, regarding the same questions, Manuel Coutinho, what do you think? Because your work was focused in an author's work, let's say it. So can we also, because you show us an example of a book, the author started writing like 30 years before its conclusion. Do you think that the story of this book will be different if the author decide to conclude it 30 years before?
I have have no.
Of course, this is a very subjective question. I know.
Yeah, of course.
This is only your opinion.
Well, the problem here is, or the thing that is interesting here is that when you experience a novel, when you experience a movie, your experience is yours. You can't share it. So if I read the book, my experience is impossible to recreate. It's impossible to explain to another person. So my perception of a movie or a novel is unique. It's mine. And what I find interesting in this particular book, adapting this book, is that to make a movie, you need a number of individuals: director of photography, the overall director, screenwriter. And what is interesting here is how the whole process was changed by this older author, by this older person. How one became so enticed, so influenced in part by the first movie, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and then the older author then, and how it changed the whole process, the whole adapting the book. But then again, adapting a novel to a movie, it's a mix of so many techniques, so many individuals that you can't really pinpoint. I can't really say that the problem, not the problem, but the changes are due to the screenwriter who adapted the novel and the director, who are the same individual in this case. But I think it's a mix of a lot of things. But interestingly, the end product, the problem was that the end product was that a completely different movie, and one that has value and that is interesting, but that loses all these subtext, all these ideas that the novel has. And maybe in a couple of years we might have another this novel adapted again, maybe more faithful to the original book, and maybe that movie will be awful and not interesting. But it's interesting how one changes the product, and how our perception of things really have an impact on the end product. And in this case, I mean, I think it's a perfect example of that.
Okay, so in the same line, I guess we can conclude from both presentations, of course, in different perspectives. But I guess we can conclude that script writing has evolved over time. Okay, so in your opinion, do you think this is a result mainly from the adaptation of writing to new habits, or is exactly the opposite, or maybe this is like a combination of both? Do you understand the point? Because as we know, our habits as human being is changing, evolving, if we can say, because of technology evolvements, etc., etc., etc. So the cinema, of course, is influenced by these habits. But the question is, what is the main role of cinema in new habits, or the opposite, new habits in cinema? What do you think about this?
Well, I'll start off. Well, in my perspective, I don't know if it has changed a lot. I mean, back in the day, at least in the American perspective, you had 4 or 5 studios, and they were the big ones. So there's also the aspect of the studio, what you can't and can't do in a movie. And we have been hearing a lot of it for the last few decades. So back in the day, we didn't really know how much the studios impacted the script, impacted the movie, impacted the scenes, the actors. And we're hearing about it more and more these days. And even movies that the original script comes out. That's happening now recently with, for example, the movie Alien 3, that there was this other script that was apparently amazing, and then they completely ditched it. And now the script is coming out as a novel. So we're having a perspective now that we've never had before. That being said, I don't think things have changed that much. I mean, I think that independent cinema is now something that has never been before, which is great. But still, we have a lot of impacts on studios and directors, and a lot of buzz concerning an actor. So you have to put it in this role. Maybe he's not suited for it, but it will sell some tickets. So I don't think things have changed a lot. And yet I have a question about this to Kalok. Hopefully I'm saying your name correctly. So after you answer, I'll have a question about this.
Okay.
Go ahead. I don't know if you want to.
I would like to hear you from about this question. How our habits change in our habits influence the cinema, or the opposite? Just to conclude Manuel's opinions, or to state something differently. I don't know. And then Manuel would like to ask you a question.
Okay. May I share? Okay. Because I think there's especially especially during the digital domain age of cinema. In the past, we have a lot of discussion about the interactive elements in cinema. That means audience can choose, can choose the flow of story development. And then now, and recently we have VR. We also discussed the form of cinema in future, and also AR, etc. And then during and then in the past, how we define cinema is based on the mass audience in a theater, and then we have a connective feeling share experience. We laugh together in a cinema, and then we cry together in a cinema, etc. But during the pandemic period, now we find that there may be another alternative. I mean alternative. That means it may not be totally say diminishing the value of traditional cinema. It may be an alternative that for people, they can have more individual viewing habit on the streaming video, for example, in Netflix, or some interactive menu like in Netflix also. I think we cannot say traditional cinema will be replaced by the Netflix or streaming cinema. Traditional movie still have its original value or aesthetics, but I think cinema can be a more flexible definition, or is a moving, is a changing definition. It's like a transforming definition. It can be more exploring, I think. But in my own filmic Lego poetics, actually, it is now it's just a concept. So what I can do is just I cannot request other filmmaker to do this. So now, because I'm also a filmmaker, so I will do some film project trying to tell the story by applying filmic Lego poetics approach. Could poetic be useful? Maybe. Some people say maybe for game script. Maybe. Because it maybe have some competition elements, maybe. So because every theory, it needs to test it by practice, I think, by creativity, I think.
So Manuel?
So I have a question concerning, so you spoke about different types of scripts and how they orient the overall movie. I'm wondering what your opinion is for movies that don't have a script. So an example of that is the Mad Max Fury Road a couple of years ago. Didn't have a script. The movie was mainly a big room full of storyboards. So since it is a movie very much focused on action, the actors will go to the room and they would understand, okay, here's the car is moving that way. Then you look at the other characters, and the actors would say, and it came out, that they were just panicked because they didn't have the script to focus. They didn't have the holy book to hold and to orient each action. And then they all saw the final movie and they were stunned. And there's also the aspect, for example, another example, that Hong Kong martial arts typically doesn't have a script. It's not oriented to action. It's just the stuntmen figure it out in the moment and they do the action. So in your perspective, wouldn't another PowerPoint slide, another argument to your presentation would be that the creating a movie without a script?
I think for some filmmaker or film director, they used to make a film without a complete, maybe without a complete script. Is up to them, because my viewpoint is that most of the film production should have a complete script, because we need a lot of preparation, a lot of calculation of one done, daily one done, budget, etc., location scouting, etc. But for some film director, especially, for example, Wong Kar-wai, okay, he is famous of shooting his film without script. But actually, he has a script, but in his mindset that script is not the film script is not completed, or should not be completed, because during the process of filmmaking, everything can be changed in his mind. So he has a very draft or a very draft script, or a very simple storyline, etc. And then he make the film depends on the performance of actor, the location, the atmosphere, etc. So for some special filmmaker or their style, they would like to make a film without or not so constrained to the complete film script. But in Hollywood, the film producer will monitor everything, and then the film script must be completed, and everything should be stick to the film production schedule. Otherwise, it will be more over budget. Okay, so I think so it depends. In my sense, in my understanding, that most of the film production should have a complete film script. But for some very maybe from a special film director like Wong Kar-wai, like Johnny To, like some European filmmaker, they want to have more freestyle. Yeah.
It's also interesting that at least in my perspective, if a movie comes out and I go and read the credits and I see that the script was written by 6 or 7 individuals, 9 out of 10 times the movie is bad. So it's interesting how having a lot of input in the final result can also be bad. I mean, you see if you see, for example, the new Space Jam movie has 6 or 7 writers. I mean, the movie is a mix of ideas. You really don't know what you're watching. So it's interesting also that while the script can be and is an amazing tool, like Quentin Tarantino would write amazing scripts, he also has control over the whole process, and that shows in the movie. But there's also that, I believe, seeing so many writers for a movie, it's always a red flag, in my perspective.
Yes, may I share one point? In Hong Kong film industry, is very changed, because in Western we will see that only one or two script writer have a credit on the film, have a film title credit. Okay, but in Hong Kong film industry is very changed. Somebody may be write the original story, and then another one write the first draft, and then another one write the second draft, and then you may see that many people like a group of script writers complete the script. It is why the situation is like that, because Hong Kong filmmaker, they make film very depend on the location, on the situation, and when the situation is changed. For example, one day I book a restaurant, but the restaurant suddenly do not open for us to make a shooting, and then the script will be changed. And the most time, because the film director must be on the set, okay, so the film director will rewrite the script, okay, and then because sometimes the film director is extremely busy on the set, so he will hire somebody, for example, the on-set scriptwriter, to help him to compete, or to compete on the scene on the set, is in a very ad hoc way. Okay, so at the end, the film title, you will see many scriptwriters, and actually it is not so good, because at the end you will see that the film may be very inconsistent, because it will suddenly change a lot of things. Okay, so some scholar find that Hong Kong movie is very like a hybrid form, because it can combine everything. It can combine comedy in horror film. It can combine romance in horror film. It can combine everything, every elements in some kind of movie. But in Western movie, we see Hollywood movie. We see romance film is romance film, horror film is horror film. It's not like Hong Kong film. Hong Kong film is like a buffet, okay, have everything, every elements, okay. Actually, it's not it's a long practice, but it's not a very good practice, but it's a long practice in Hong Kong film industry. Yeah. Thank you. Here's my sharing.
So I don't know if we have more questions from YouTube. Maybe not. So just to conclude, I would like to use the final question that Chan Kalok used in this presentation. That was, what a good storytelling is. So,
okay.
Can you have some more details about this? And also Manuel Coutinho, can you comment this? Answer the question, maybe? From your perspective, of course.
Okay. From my perspective, I think it's a very good question. It's always I asking myself, what is a good storytelling is. I think the good storytelling is may not exactly in consistent with the story itself. For example, La La Land itself is a romance story. Okay, the romance story, but the storytelling is musical theme song. Okay, but the same story can also be told in horror film, La La Land in horror film, or La La Land in suspense film storytelling. So it's a kind of chemistry between the story and how to tell the story. I think the how to define what is the best storytelling is back to the originality, and also the creativity. If because many story we have watched thousands of story, but sometimes we watch a story with a new way of storytelling. We find the creativity. We find the originality. I think it will be a good storytelling, in my sense. Thank you.
There is no receipt for a good storytelling, right?
Yeah.
We should be creative. Yeah, I agree.
It should be creative. Yeah.
Manuel, do you want to say something?
I mean, it's like I said. I mean, there's no plan. There's no exact way to make a great storytelling. But it's interesting if you look back. I mean, for example, Star Wars, the storytelling it's basic. It's the guy saving the princess and winning in the end, and yet the movie was a success. I mean, could it be that the setting was the right thing? Maybe, but I mean, Flash Gordon and stuff like that had been out for years and years, and it didn't reach the success that Star Wars did. So maybe a good storytelling is also connected to good timing. So the movie coming out the right time. I mean, we have a lot of movies that became cult classics years and years later. I mean, I'm a big fan of Carpenter movies, and there were small movies with a low budget, and then for years, decades later, everyone is liking its movies and it's praising their originality in the way they used a lower budget to make that movie. And then again, the example that I said before of, for example, Mad Max Fury Road. I mean, it's an amazing movie, and you could say that the storytelling is then moving one way to the side and then moving again and going back. That's the basis of the storytelling of that movie, is then moving forward and moving backwards. And again, the movie is amazing visually, so it's not all to storytelling. I mean, there's so many aspects that we have to think about. So again, there is no receipt, but I would say that timing and having the right individuals working in the project, I mean, make the whole process.
Yeah, this is a good point. So to create a good movie, well, good movie, it depends. What is a good movie? Because we have very, very successful movies that maybe they are not that good, okay? And we have good movies that were not very successful in terms of audience and returns, etc. So, do you think a big budget could create a good movie?
Do you want to go first?
John?
Okay, in my opinion, I think big budget can guarantee the production quality. For example, if the film director want the costume is like real silk, okay, he have the budget to make the costume real feel, but the budget itself cannot guarantee good storytelling. Good storytelling is subject to our creativity, our artistic judgment. I think that. So we sometimes we find that very low budget film, they also can have a good storytelling, because it depends on how the film director he can challenge. Okay, he can have faith. Okay, he is faith to challenge a traditional storytelling. So I very pace Christopher Nolan, because in the past we think that black and white must be flashback. Okay, color must be present tense. Okay, in cinema time, but Christopher Nolan challenge this point. Black and white is present tense, and then color is flashback. Also, everyone is very surprised and suddenly do know how to read how to watch the film, because he changed our traditional concept. But for a film director, because when he's trying something new, it cannot be guaranteed successful or not. Okay, so he must has some bravery, okay, to make some new challenge, some new approach in cinema.
Okay, so in your opinion, film director is or plays a key role, of course, in the success of the film.
Yeah. Because he is the one who actually to shoot the film, to execute how to shoot the film. Actually, here on the set. Okay.
So film director roles is much more important than the budget. We will say.
Yeah. You might understand it.
You want to say something?
Well, problem with the bigger budget is that
it's
who's
easier,
giving
at
the,
least it's easier, right?
yeah, but there's also who's giving the money. So then you have the executive producers and how they change the movie overall.
Yeah, good point.
So in a way, I would say that there's also the other problem, that is, if your movie is not big enough, it's not going to play in cinemas. It's going to be an independent movie, smaller audience. It might become a cult classic, might become a movie that people want to watch, but then they inevitably ask the same question, that is it on Netflix? And you say, no, it's not. And the person doesn't watch the movie.
Mhm.
So accessibility is also important. But I mean, obviously the budget helps. And I think that there are great movies with smaller budgets, there are amazing movies with bigger budgets, but there are also awful movies with a gigantic budget. And then you ask, okay, who's going to pay for this? I mean, the movie came out. Where did the money come from? Where did it went to? So it's an interesting moment, I think, in cinema today. And I mean, inflation reaches everything, and it definitely reaches movies, because we see budgets now that
But
we've
the
never
point
seen before.
is also how to classify a movie in a good movie and a bad movie.
Yeah.
Is it only based on money, or also in other factors? You know, because sometimes we can spend a lot of money in a movie. Apparently, it wasn't a success, but it depends on the way we looked at the movie. It depends, of course.
Well, you have the example of, for example, Brad Pitt. I mean, Brad Pitt has amazing movies, dramatic movies, and movies that were going to be watched long after he's dead. And the first movie that he made that reached, I think, a box office more than 100 million, something like that, was World War Z, which was perhaps one of the worst movies he's made. So also, what sells? That's an interesting question, because he's made such amazing and iconic movies, Fight Club, all of that. And then what gave him fame, or what made him reach something that he's never reached before, was a movie that was pretty weak, or was an action movie overall. So that's also interesting. If you ask what's a good or what's a bad movie, if you watch his career, probably going to say, well, the one that gave more money was World War Z, and you're going to say, well, it's probably one of his worst movies. So the question of budget and the box office success, I mean, it's definitely, we can get lost there, and it's probably not a good indicator, but it's what sells, so we have to consider it.
Well, in my opinion, we can also measure the quality of a movie if 40, 50, 100 years after its creation, we still use that movie as the inspiration, etc. So this is a good point. So, in my opinion, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, guys, it was very nice to spend this 1.5 hours almost with you. Very nice to meet you. I don't know, Mo, if we have any questions, comments from YouTube.
No, the one I shared that Kiman already answered. Chankaluk already answered, yes.
So I guess we can conclude this session. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for attending. It was a a big pleasure for me moderate this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.